Okay, we're gonna get started. So welcome to Weston's Financial Literacy Club webinar.
We're so excited to have you guys all here tonight as we kind of go into these essential financial topics that we feel like every student should know. My name is Amy,
And I'm Mary.
and we will be moderating this webinar tonight.
As students, understanding how to manage money properly, budget wisely, and plan for the future is incredibly important, which is why we've invited a guest speaker here tonight who will be sharing valuable insights on topics such as personal budgeting, money management, and financial planning for college and beyond.
Also, before we get started, if you guys have any questions throughout the meeting, feel free to drop them in the chat at any time. We'll have a Q&A session at the end where you'll have the chance to ask questions directly.
We're very excited to have our speaker here, so we will turn it over to you.
Why, thank you very much, Mary and Amy, and thank you, and hello to everyone else. And so you can also interrupt with questions if I get too boring, and I'll try to make it more entertaining. So feel free to add comments as we go. So there's a picture of me. You'll notice I have my fancy work background to make it look like I'm quite professional on a Sunday afternoon. Um, I'm currently an operating partner with Francisco Partners in the financial officer practice. Before that, I've been a CFO for three companies. Two of them were public companies. One went private and then was public and then went private under a company called Primera. And so they're pretty large companies, all software focused. And in all of these, I was the finance guy. And then before that, I was also a finance person. I just wasn't the chief finance person. So lots of finance experience. But you will see finance means many different things to many different people. So, I don't know it all, but I will share some nice topics and I'll look forward to your questions. So let's jump in. I thought we'd start here about money, happiness, and your goals because they're all very much aligned. And I would say first, I think financial literacy is a great thing for everyone. Yeah, to be honest, just the fact that you guys are spending time in a financial literacy club and thinking about it tells me that you're like probably miles ahead of where I was when I was your age. Well, I'm certain of that, but miles and miles ahead, just because you're thinking about these topics and wrestling with them, which is great. I did want to throw one item out up front. This question of can money buy happiness? And it is an interesting thought, and I think it's really important that we have financial literacy, but money is not the be all end all. Having a nice balanced approach is. Now, I will also illustrate that when the slides go out, you can click on the lovely link on the bottom for any articles that are referenced in my presentation to read the whole article. And this one actually discusses can money buy happiness? Here's the headline. If you don't have any money, you're really sad. But after you get enough money to meet your basic needs, all of a sudden, more money doesn't really increase happiness. So it is something to think about, especially when we get to the career section and looking at school choices and things like that. It is important to have this balanced approach. But I will say that no matter what profession you choose, having good financial literacy is super important to making sure you're happy and content and can meet your financial goals. Now, here's my commercial to make sure everyone listens to the rest of the presentations. Two tough realities and one bit of good news. The two tough realities is, oh my goodness, life is so much more expensive than you would like to think it is. And, I remember when I was in school, I thought, oh, as soon as I get out of school, I'll be earning money and it's going to be great. And I was earning more money and I still felt broke all the time. It just feels like that for a long time because life is expensive. But I think when you have the tools to control how you spend money, you know where you're spending and where it's going, it really helps a lot to let you feel in control. And again, over time, you'll be able to meet those goals. And that's the blessing, right? You have all the things you need to outsmart all of life's challenges, if you will, and make sure you can meet your financial goals and do what you want to do in your life. So let's jump right in. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about money management and banking. We're going to talk more than you want to hear about credit, and you're going to get a very dad style speech on credit, and you're just going to love it, I'm sure. Everybody who's not my daughter will, anyways. Then we'll talk about investing, especially investing for teenagers, and some really core concepts, a little bit on college and career, And I'll tell you, I'm very selfish in this section. You'll find out that all of the topics in college and career have to do with growing up to be a finance person like myself. But I think that's important for this. And then we'll get to questions. And so hopefully we have some interesting questions other than what's the name of Linda's cat. All right. Money management. Where to begin? Look, money management sounds like a big topic, but really, it starts with something as simple as just where did your money go? Those of you guys who are already working and things like that, you get a paycheck and you feel rich for at least 10 minutes, but then it's just gone so quickly. And money management helps you get your arms around that and really answer that question, well, where does my money go? And then to really think about, well, where do I want it to go and how do I make it happen? So, as you probably all have already heard, the first thing is having a budget. And note the lovely articles that are pinned off that, both from NerdWallet, which is a great website for like getting your arms around how to budget and different tools. But a budget in its simplest form starts with just knowing how much money you're going to make each month and then knowing where that money goes. Like, what are your bills that you have to write out? Now, it can be a bit tricky because, we all have lots of bills, but some bills don't come every month. And then sometimes there's emergencies and things like that. But starting with a budget that says, here's how much I make, here's how much I spend, and here's the way to get an A+ on the huge quiz that comes after that. The goal is to spend less than you make. Because if it's the other way around, that's bad. So, we have just the budget at that simplest form. Now you can make it more complicated. And like one of the NerdWallet articles I mentioned talks about a budget where you set this out and yes, you go through and you write down your income and your bills, but then you really think about how you would like to split that up. And this method, this 50-30-20 method, says you'd have 50% of your money going towards your needs, like, your car payment or your rent once you guys are all out of high school or things like that. 30% for your wants. So that's pretty good. You're at least getting to do some fun things. And 20% to make sure you're saving out of every paycheck, you're saving some money or paying off debt if you have some debt. And so there's all of these things that are combined. But if you start thinking about your budget holistically, like not just I'm going to spend it all till I run out of money, but am I satisfying my needs, my wants, and making sure I got some money saved for a rainy day or paying off debt? After a few months, you'll start to feel really a lot better and a lot more control of your financials. So, but here's another way to think about it. And I like this. Now, I don't know if you guys know who Warren Buffett is. He's like, first of all, so old he makes me look young, which is hard to believe. And then second, he's so rich he makes all of us together look poor. Like Warren Buffett is like the king of investing. But he had this approach that he really came at it and he said, don't save what is left after you spend all your money, because you probably won't save very much, but rather spend what is left after you save. So in that last example of that budget, Warren Buffett would say, if you're doing 20%, save the 20% and then only spend the 80, like save first, make that your big priority. Now, we should also point out here that Warren Buffett's a billionaire millions of times over, or well, thousands of times over. So, we're on the right course if we start following those examples. But Warren Buffett is also this great investor, and he's going to talk about, we'll talk a little bit more about this secret weapon that he helps us identify. Ooh, a little. There we go. Thank you. So let's talk about banking. So most of you may already have bank accounts. So first of all, banks will, when you go into the bank, they'll ask if you want to open a checking account or a savings account. I personally think that in the modern world, for other reasons we're going to talk about, you really only need one. You probably just need a checking account at your local bank, because banks don't pay you very much for savings accounts. In the good old days, you put some money in your savings account, you would earn interest on it, and it would build up over time. But banks pay so little. So I really think that, why that's still a viable option for many of you. And you can then maybe squirrel your money away so you don't accidentally spend it. That's also a good method there. I think the biggest thing you need is a good bank. You need at least a checking account. But then here's some other considerations. You know, like my parents still go to the bank when they want to do stuff. I still log on. You guys will probably never go to a bank until it's time to sign some big documents when you buy a house or something. Like you're so more, ready to embrace electronic banking. So make sure whatever bank you use, they have good online access and a good app. That's probably way up high on on one of the most important things you would do. Um, I also think some of the banks have nice budgeting tools. So when we talk about what budgeting tools are out there and things like that, using a bank that has a nice modern website, they're going to have a lot of just plain old-fashioned budgeting tools and ways to track where you spent. Another important consideration is, should you use the same bank as your parents? Just hypothetically, when you're in college and you need mom and dad to put some money in your account quickly, that really can speed things up. Of course, we also know we have Venmo and things like that. So, but here, this last point, and this is kind of a geeky one, but I thought I would hit on it. One of the things that's great about a bank is it has what's called FDIC insurance. We don't need to go into that in great detail, but what FDIC insurance says is, even if your money's at the bank and the bank gets hit by a meteor, goes broke, all sorts of bad things happen, the government insures your money up to $250,000. And you might think it's super remote. Like, what are the chances that my bank goes broke or gets hit by a meteor? Both are unlikely. The meteor doesn't happen in living memory, but within the last 10 years, there's been a number of banks who actually become insolvent. So having that bank with FDIC insurance is super important, especially as your saving plan kicks in. Last thing you want to do is save money between here and college, only to find out your bank went broke and lost it. So, any big bank that you see, frankly, any one with the word bank in their title is going to have FDIC insurance. You'll see that all over. Part of the reason I bring it up is because Venmo, which I love, and it's very convenient, doesn't qualify for FDIC insurance because it's not a bank. So just one thing to think about when you're using apps like Venmo, and there's so many others out there that are apps, they're actually money transfer solutions. They don't even pretend to be a bank, although it kind of feels like it at times. So it's really important, like if you use Venmo a lot and you're saving up a lot of cash, or well, Venmo cash, if you will, because your friends are giving it to you, every once in a while, transfer that back to your real bank to make sure you get that insurance. That's super important. Now, all of this, I forgot my favorite point that I really wanted to make. Back up on that checking account side, watch out for fees. Fees stink. Some banks will charge you like 25 bucks, 30 bucks a month just to use their checking account. Some banks will. There are so many banks who don't. So when you open your checking account, make sure there's no fees. Some of them have like minimum deposits you have to make, like you have to do direct deposit or have to maintain a balance of a certain size. But that's one of those first super important financial rules that you get, is understanding fees and all the sneaky ways fees add up in your life. But don't let your bank start that. If your bank is charging you a fee, either call them up and say what account doesn't have a fee and understand those rules, or go to one that will give you a free checking. Make sense, everyone? All right. So now let's talk about debt. This is the dad's speech portion of the presentation. So debt is borrowing money, plain and simple. Debt is so dangerous, so dangerous. So many young people rack up a boatload of debt, and then it just plagues their life for a really long time. So why does debt exist? Well, used properly, it can be a really important tool. It can help you do good things. It can help you get out of jam if you need it. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but just realize it's like having a powerful weapon in your pocket that in the right circumstance can do good things and really protect you, but can also hurt you terribly. So I wanted to spend a few minutes on good debt versus bad debt. And again, there's an article at the bottom. This is a Fidelity article that really goes into this in more detail than you would want, perhaps, but just in case. So good debt can be defined in just a couple ways. First, you're borrowing money that will help you build income or net worth over time. A good example of that we'll have a whole slide on in a minute is some of you are going to have to borrow money to get through college. Well, if that loan that you're taking out helps you get your education, sets you up to earn money the rest of your way, you would say, okay, that's good debt. If that loan is to help you buy a house someday, and houses tend to appreciate, and it's nice to have a place to live indoors, that again is good debt. So there are reasons to use debt, but you have to be so careful. The other characteristic of good debt is it's going to have a reasonable interest rate. I like right now, if you've got a loan that's 6 or 7% interest rate, and we're going to have some interest rate examples coming up, that's probably good debt. So let's talk about bad debt. Bad debt, well, obviously, doesn't help you build income or worth over time, and it's usually characterized by super high interest rates. And the most obvious example is credit cards. There's other bad debt examples out there. When you guys get out of high school, like the second you turn 18, every credit card company in the world is going to be offering you credit. And it is so dangerous because whereas good debt has an interest rate of 6 or 7, credit card debts, the average rate right now, which I looked up just today, is 24%. That's 24% a year, which is exorbitant and it's miserable. It's a horrible situation. But let's spend a minute to make sure this all sinks in for us. So debt, again, is just borrowing money. And here's the thing. When you have debt, credit card debt, bank debt, part of the deal is you promise to pay it back. They even call the piece of paper you sign a promissory note because you're promising to pay it back. But you also have to pay back the interest. So let's just use an example where I go out and I put $1,000 on my credit card, and it is just for a big party. It's not good debt uses. I just blow $1,000 on the credit card. And that's the thing about credit cards. If it swipes through the machine, they let you do it. Well, if I do that $1,000 and I don't pay it off, it just sits there for 3 years. When I go to pay it off, that $1,000 now is $1,720. And if you look at the bottom, I break that out. 1,000 plus 20% interest. I used a nice fat round number. Is I owe them 1,200 at the end of that first year. But now it's that 1,200 times 20% more interest on top of it, 1,440, and it just builds up. So you see how that debt, especially really high interest rate debt like this, can just eat you alive. And so many fine Americans have so much debt, like, thousands of dollars when you average everybody in America across the country on their credit card balance. There are some ways we can maybe mitigate that. So, in case you haven't gotten the theme of this part of the conversation, credit cards are a trap. They have super high interest rates, and you will see they offer you so many rewards, like, oh, free miles, and after you spend enough, you can go to the airplane lounge, or maybe you get this or that or the next thing. There's a reason why credit card companies are selling these cards to you so heavily. It's because they make money on them, and they make a ton of money on them. So just be really wise. Now, let's also make sure we don't get confused between credit cards and debit cards. Credit cards, bad, dangerous. We just talked about those. Those are debt. But debit cards, many of you probably already have them, they come with your checking account. And debit cards, rather than loaning you money, they just transfer your own money, right? A debit card is coming out of your account. So they're much better. They're much less dangerous. There is one caveat of danger is if you actually spend more than you have, then you rack up a bunch of fees at your bank, and that's not good. But as a general rule, make sure you have a debit card with you because it's easy access and makes electronic purchases really easy. But boy, be careful with credit cards. So after this whole speech, that's 3 slides of me whining about credit cards. You might ask, why does every adult I know have one? Because pretty much every adult you know has one. Well, credit cards are good in one way for emergencies. When you have an emergency, and maybe it's more than the money you have in your savings account, right? What if your car breaks down when you're on the way to college and you run out of money on your debit card? That's when a credit card can be helpful. But there is a hack. A hack is if you pay off your credit card balance every month, like all the way off, they don't charge you interest. So that's the one way where you could have this credit card, have access to the debt for emergencies, and know you're not going to pay interest on it. I think that's not a bad thing to do. I would say put it off as long as you can. Use your parents' credit cards. That's much more fun. But put it off as long as you can. But there will be a time when you'll want your own credit card for those emergencies. Be so careful. If you miss that payoff, the whole credit card by a day, they charge you interest for the month and it will make you sad, sad, sad. Is that making sense to everyone? All right. Let's talk about this, college loans. Remember, I used college loans as an example of good debt. Just because it's good debt, though, you don't want to go crazy running around trying to rack it up. So I'm sure you guys are all heading towards college in the next couple of years. Many people use college loans to get through debt. 59% of graduates with a bachelor's degree last year graduated with some measure of debt. But look how much the average debt for a private school graduate person is, like going to a private college, graduating with a bachelor's degree. On average, it was $32,000 per person. Like 32,000 is a lot. The average for people who went to state schools was around 25,000. They tend to have a little lower tuition, but if you think about that, you would get out of school, finally ready to get that first post-college job, feeling like you're going to be loaded, and then pretty soon you start having to make payments on that $32,000. Now, one of the good things here is many college loans are financed or supported by the government, so they have a lower interest rate. So again, it's good debt because it's helping you get ahead in life. It's helping you build a path to more income down the road, and it has a good rate. But don't let that kid you. Out of that whole 32,000, I'll bet you quite a few of those dollars went to things other than tuition and books, like maybe parties or dinners with their friends. It's so dangerous. So never borrow more than you have to, because that $32,000, that's that average debt, will take people 10, 15 years to pay off in a lot of cases. And that's a long time. So you graduate when you're young and happy, and by the time you've paid it off, you can see your 40th birthday. That should make you all very sad. So there's this last thing. One thing just super to be careful of. When you're taking college loans, make sure you're pursuing a career that's going to allow you to pay off those loans, right? You can't, some people have racked up humongous numbers. Like you hear people graduating with $100,000 of debt. Unless they have a job that pays an absolute fortune, that debt is going to be drowning them for years to come. So always think about what my career is, what field I want to go into, and ask yourself, am I borrowing money that I can pay back comfortably when I get out of school? Because there are alternatives. There's other forms of financial aid. There's cheaper colleges. There's different colleges. There's shopping around for the college that'll give you a scholarship. You really need to think about that. And then I did ask that last bullet point, which is, I know, another dad comment, but when you're borrowing money to go to college, make sure you graduate. I mean, sadly, one of the worst things that's happened to a lot of people is they'll start college. They'll borrow money to go through college, and then life happens. They, have something goes wrong in their family. They need to get out of college. They have a baby. They have things like that. And then they can't finish school. And now they've got the debt from college, but they didn't get the degree that's going to help propel their career. And it can really be a disadvantage. So again, college loans, good debt, but be careful with it because it's like all debt. It can really be a burden for you. But if you play it well, you're conservative, you borrow only what you need, you be really careful with that, and you really plan out and manage your money well, it can be a really powerful tool. I will tell you, I had college loans. I would have not got my first job out of college had I not taken those loans. And so, I benefited from this whole lesson we're talking about. I just want you guys all to know how it works and be really careful. Okay. The last thing on debt, credit ratings. Notice how I say they. Well, there's a lot of theys. There's actually 3 credit rating agencies who know more about certainly all the adults in your life, but probably you too, because they track everything. They know how much debt you have. They know how much debt you could have. Like if you have a credit card with a $5,000 credit limit, but you've only say you've paid it off. You don't owe anything. They know that too. And that actually hurts your credit scores. They know every late payment you've made. They know all sorts of things. They know everywhere you live. They now offer services to help validate your identity and will ask you years later, where did you live 10 years ago? What address was that? Because they track so much data. But what they do is these credit agencies pull all this data together and they assign you a score that assesses your ability to pay so that when you go to borrow money, they're going to share your credit score. And that credit score, which you see on the last point there, it falls between this range of 300 and 850 points. What that really is telling you is how likely you are going to be able to pay back any money you borrow. So say, you're heading through life and it's time to buy your house or to buy a car. The very first thing they're going to do when you go to finance that car is run your credit, and they're going to look at your score. And if it's 850, they're going to say, you are a genius with exceptional credit. You get the best interest rate we have, and you definitely get the loan. If you're at 301, they're going to say, thank you, please shop somewhere else, right? And it falls along that spectrum. Like they literally will, a lot of lenders will say, I'm not loaning to somebody with a 300-point credit score. Really, most of us find ourselves, especially when you're first out of college, it's not at all uncommon to have a kind of a mediocre score. You haven't had a long history of earning money. You haven't borrowed money and paid it back and built that up. So it takes a while, and it is important to, again, use debt when it's smart and then make sure you're just really on top of those payments and you pay it off. And that's the kind of thing the credit agency says, okay, here's somebody who knows how to manage their money, and we'll give them a higher score over time. So really important, but never think for a second that in anything you're doing financially isn't being tracked and measured. Oh, and here's the last part. They keep your records for years. Like you miss a payment, that will be on your credit report for 3, 4, 5 years. They'll say, lost a few points off your credit rating because of it. Now, if it was one time, it's not the biggest thing in the world. But again, they start seeing that happening a few times and your credit score will plummet. And it has real repercussions to you and your financial future down the road. So credit cards are dangerous. Credit ratings, they're hard to love, but they're out there and they're part of the system. Now we'll move off debt, which I'm sure you're all glad of. Let's talk about investing. So here's the funnest part. So if I asked a survey of who wants to be a millionaire, I'm going to guess I could get a lot of volunteers. And really, for today's lesson, to become a millionaire requires one thing. It's this understanding of how compounding interest works. We actually already saw an example of it with debt, because when we talked about the debt, it was going against us, right? Remember how the payments got bigger and bigger and bigger over time? Well, compounding interest when you're investing is going the other way. So let's take a look. So on compounding interest, if we think about it, we'll start out with just this simple example. When you invest your money grows, right? When you are investing your money, you're in a way loaning that money or giving that money to somebody else who then has to pay you for the use of that money. There's risk associated. It's not all guaranteed, but that's the concept. So in our example, let's just do a quick example with $1,000 invested where you earn 7% a year investment. I picked 7% because on average, over long periods of time, the stock market has gone up approximately 7% on average. So you invest $1,000 at 7%. At the end of the year, you have $1,070. Now you've got that $1,070 invested. Again at 7%. Now it's $1,145. So that year you earned $75. It's a little bit more. And then that grows to $1,225 the next year. Now it's $80 a year. So you see how it's compounding. It's, what you earned it starts to earn and it builds up and it builds up. Now, let's just say for fun, that $1,000 you runs out there and it meets this 7% requirement over the life. And when you retire, that $1,000 has become $24,000. Now, here's the depressing part. Look at the bottom. That assumes you retire in 17 years. And if you're 18 years old, that's about how long it is. So don't freak out. It's a long time. So, of course, it's going to be more, but it's how it works. Here's your secret weapon that you guys have that I don't have. You're young. When you're investing, time matters as much as anything. Like, given enough time and some good financial discipline, this money can grow and grow and grow and can really do amazing things because your money starts working for you. So again, that's that principle of compounding interest. And if you blow off everything else from this fine presentation, other than credit cards are bad, understand that by putting your money to work and allowing it to compound, it can be super important for you. Okay, there you go. Teens have this advantage of time. So here's some investing tips. First, start early. I would like to say you should probably be starting in high school, doing some fine investments. The next one is, though, really know the difference between investing and gambling. You see a lot of people, and especially, heaven forbid, you get your investment advice from TikTok and things like that, who have been wildly successful gamblers. They're not investing, they're gambling the money, and it's just really dangerous. So maybe you like to gamble, but don't gamble with your savings fund, that important money that is really near and dear to you. You've got to have that nest egg going, that money that you're conservative with and you save. So invest in things that there's good reasons, that you've done your research, that you can have reasons to believe that investment's going to be good over time. The other one, the third tip here, just like I worry about your bank accounts charging you fees, because that stinks, you also have to watch fees on your investments. And there's a lot out there where, there are transaction fees when you buy a stock or when you sell a stock, or there are transaction fees when somebody's managing an account for you and things like that. So always ask about fees. And there's some really low fees ways to invest. A lot of times, people recommend index funds, which, are a way to invest in large pools of equities or blends of equities and debt. But because it's automated and it's following some other funds out there that are very diversified, they have really low fees. So it's a good way. Now, the last point, which is a fun one, avoid paying taxes, but only legally, because illegally really will hurt your investing plans for your future. But you can avoid taxes in some unique ways, and I hit those below. So what you want to do is, I would recommend people open an investment account. Everyone on this call, put a little bit of money in there. In your investment account, even if you don't know what stocks to buy, the money can oftentimes be invested in just government debt funds. So where you would earn next to no interest on your savings account at the bank, you could be earning, I think, roughly 3-4% right now on that money in super safe investments through an investment account. The other one, which comes the tax savings account, is a Roth IRA account. Now, I get when you're in high school and you still got college and a whole lot of life to start, it's really almost disgusting to think about retirement. But if you can, putting money in a Roth IRA account is great, because you put that money in there and that money is not taxed again until you retire. And why is that important? Compounding interest. So if you don't have to pay taxes, then you have more money to invest, and that money goes to work for you year after year after year. So quite truly, even a high schooler should think about a Roth IRA if they have a few extra bucks to put away just to get things started. Now, the trick is, there's rules around all this, but you have to have earned income. So if you have a job, you've got earned income, and you could put up to that amount in a Roth IRA. And then here's probably the more important point. When you're finally out of school and you get your first job, money's still going to be tight. I just guarantee it. But if you can contribute to your retirement account in your first paycheck, even a small amount, you'll need to ratchet it up over time to hit your financial goals. But if you can start that discipline, just let that money be taken out of your paycheck before you have a chance to spend it, and learn to live on that, what's left, just as Warren Buffett advised us. it will make a huge difference in your life and, a huge financial difference for you. Okay. So how about that million? I promised to show you a way to get to $1 million. So here's again just an example, but it's kind of a fun example because who doesn't want to be a millionaire? So let's just assume I let you off easy, no investment required till you get out of college. You graduate when you're 22. And if you then have your first job and you put $342 per month into your savings account at 7% interest, and then you don't retire at 65, that math works out to exactly $1 million. So if you think about that, you will be putting just 342 bucks a month away, which is, actually not a tiny number, but I don't want to kid about that. But you just start that practice every month. You will be a millionaire when you turn 65, so long as your investments perform as well as the investments have performed for the last umpteen years. Now, what's other things, it's kind of fun with math, right? Is if you think about that, you add up all those $342 that you put away over that period of time, that would have been you putting in $172,000 of your money out of your paycheck. But because the interest on that, because the money was working for you, you get back $1 million. Okay, you ready? Now everybody's happy and all ready to be a millionaire. And now I'm gonna make you sad with one last point. We haven't really talked about inflation, so that $1 million won't be quite as powerful it will as it is today, 47 years from now. But even when I did a quick math on that, it's still a heck of a lot of money. But this is just that example of what you have the advantage of. It's time and discipline, and that can do wonderful things in your career. Because as you get older, you're going to want to put more than 342 bucks away each month. So, all right, ready for the college and career. Hopefully everybody's happy. I don't see anybody booing me through comments yet, so hopefully we're doing okay. All right. So financial literacy, no matter what your chosen profession is so important to your career. I mean, to be honest, if say you picked I don't know, some major where you're not going to make any money for a while. Say you're going to be an actor and you haven't been discovered in college and you're probably going to have a few tough years. Frankly, between those people probably need to have more financial literacy because they've got to figure out how to hustle and manage their money waiting for their big break. But I think all of us really need to think about our financial literacy. And so, to be honest, no matter what major you might end up with, I would say it really is a good idea to take a business class or two when you're in college. It really helps round you out. If, say, your dream is to start to start your own business and you don't want a finance career, you want this business career. Well, sad news is if you're running your own business, that is a heck of a lot of knowing your own finances and managing your money. So again, take some finance classes, take some accounting classes. I have listed a few, business degrees and related degrees that I think are really neat for people with an interest in finance and business generally, right? I mean, there's majors called finance majors. There's majors called accounting majors. I was an accounting major. I was an accounting major 2 times. I was like a kid who didn't know what a lot of jobs were in the world. And I thought, wow, if I'm an accounting major, I probably could become an accountant and I'd be guaranteed a job. And a job was something I desperately needed the moment school got out. So that was my path. I don't really do accounting every day in my current job, but accounting is the language of business. So it comes around and having that knowledge has been really helpful. But you see in the business degrees, there's a whole bunch of, nuances all on the same things. All of those business degrees are going to come with a healthy dose of accounting classes, a lot of finance classes, this calculating time values of money and things like that are just examples of finance and understanding how money works. But there's also the degrees on the right-hand side, which can be quite interesting. Entrepreneurship, that if you're thinking about starting your own business, that's kind of a cool degree to look into. A lot of liberal arts colleges may not have a business degree, but they almost all have an economics program. Again, a super good degree. I work with a ton of people who had economics undergraduate degrees. And, economics is the study of money at work in society. But those classes come with, all the finance concepts, all of the accounting concepts you would need, and they're really going to give you a good foundation. Some people like to think about more the management side, want to jump in there. So there's almost every school you go to, it may not have a business degree. I'm sure all the good schools have accounting degrees because who wouldn't want to do that? But then you have these other choices like economics and things like that, which can be really quite exciting. Um, you know, it, here's a bonus tip. This tip is free of charge. One thing I hear a lot of is, especially with the big consulting companies who hire a lot of people right out of college, a lot of businesses, consider when you're going to college is pick a technical major, something you want to do, like, when you get out of college, like a business or finance major in this example. But then think about pairing that with a liberal arts degree as either a minor or a second major. It turns out when you're going through college, a lot of people get a major and then a minor, like it's just a second area of study. That's a little less. That's why it's called minor. To be honest, by the time you get a minor, you're probably only a few classes away from having dual majors. But I think one of the things that's interesting about this approach is when you're interviewing and you're talking to people, this like, oh, this person, she's a great finance person, knows her numbers cold, does math in her head, ice in her veins, will be a great finance person. But she's a history major or an English major or something else, is really well rounded, and it helps your communication skills, it helps your writing skills. And frankly, if you can find something like that, it's a way to balance out. You might have some part of your life that you're really passionate about what you're doing, and that's going to make your money. But you also have this really neat interest in doing these other things that makes you a more well-rounded person. And if for no other reason, makes you more fun to talk to. So I think you should think about this as a good approach. You do have to think, we go to college to get a job, and part of getting a job is going to be sitting down and interviewing people, telling them your stories, proving you can do the work, but that you're a good colleague to work with, and that you're going to be able to not just do your work your first 2 years out of school, but be able to be that person who's a critical thinker over their career. And that's really going to help differentiate you. All right. Here's a few finance and business careers. I'm going to spend a few minutes on them because I honestly I'm still figuring out some of these and what they do. So you will see when you are nearing the end of college, so many jobs that have the word financial analyst in them. Financial analyst is, the word for like usually the starting position for many people when they get out of college in a business career. But you'll see financial analysts for investment firms. So the company I work for now is a private equity company. They do big investments in software companies. And there's whole teams of people right out of school who are financial analysts. And they, look at the financial data from the companies, and they do all this analysis on it, and they compare it to last year, this year, next year. They compare it to the competition. They're just really growing that. But it's such a good foundation because as they spend just a few years doing that work, they know so much about so many different companies. It really broadens them out. The other way that you might think about it is what a corporate financial planning analyst. In most bigger companies have a group that's called financial planning and analysis. And again, great places to start, either right out of college or while you're early in your career, and allows you to go work into a big company and rise through the ranks. I will tell you, even though it's not the path I went down, those people are more likely to be CFOs than what I did, which is the very attractive accounting feature, which is next. So it's a good way to think about it. If you like accounting and if you like systems and you things like that, and you will find out very early taking accounting classes whether this is something you really get or not. Being an accountant degree is super valuable, and there's this need. There's these big accounting firms out there that hire so many people right out of college, and to be honest, they're desperate to hire people right out of school. When I went, there was lots of guys graduating as accountants. Now, to be honest, I've heard it's like 2/3 women are the new accountants coming out of school. So, it's really a profession, in these big firms, great place to start your career. But it's not just these big auditing firms that go check on people's books. Every company out there, every company of any size has an accounting team. At the company that I'm helping now, one of our portfolio companies that the private equity firms invested in, we have like 40 people in accounting. And so it's really quite a large group. You may also want to you hear this word about investment bankers. Investment bankers hire people right out of school who want to be financial analysts. And again, it's like the investment firms. They're just doing a ton of work analyzing potential borrowers or companies that want to go public and understanding those kind of things about them. Just really seeing a lot of volume and a lot. It's a lot of work, but a lot of experience comes your way doing that. The last one on here is a financial advisor. There's so many people who need people like you on this call to help them figure out what to do with their money, right? It's people that, maybe they need help with their budgeting. A lot of them need help with their investments. And there's a whole industry around people that go into those kind of careers. I would say also, there's these related careers that are not pure finance careers, but they just flex so hard on people with good financial skills. Management consultants, again, really big firms hire a ton of people out of school. You could become a tax person, helping people with their taxes. Hey, there's a lot of jobs in every company of really they're operational jobs, but with a heavy finance influence. And you'll see business operations or marketing operations or sales operations, and those they're just looking for people. There's people who are just really good at handling huge volumes of big data. And then there's actuaries who, they help determine probabilities of things happening. They are the lifeblood of insurance companies. So lots of job choices, lots of career opportunities. It all starts with getting your foundation, getting your education, and finding out what you want to do. And look at that. I'm 1 minute off from my stated goal of being done at 45 minutes into the hour. So it's now the Q&A session time. So, ladies, do you want me to jump into the prepared questions, or there's some other questions you'd like to go to?
I think we'll start by opening the floor for questions. So if anyone here has a question, you guys can feel free to type it in the chat. And then we can start answering.
If I open the chat, I guess everybody can see it, but that's okay. Is Linda going to answer the name of her cat? It's not. Oh, Hazel, thank you. Okay, how do you open an investment account? Oh, this is a good one. Great question, Linda. So here's one of the bummers for those of you who are not 18. It will require your parents to help you. I would say, you'd want to start by going to an investment firm, and some of the big ones are Fidelity, which is world headquarters is in Boston, so probably lots of your parents have Fidelity accounts. You just do it online. That's at least where it starts. If they need to see some documents, you have to go into their offices, and your account will be opened up. But you really can open them up quite quickly and easily online, at least do all the paperwork. When you're under 18, you'll probably need a custodial account. That means mom or dad is on it until you turn 18. Same for the bank. But that's the great way to start. So just open up that first investment account. And again, then once that's up and running, you link it with your bank account so you can transfer money back and forth. Even, if your bank account is at Chase, you got an extra few bucks, or you're saving so much a month, you transfer it over to Fidelity, and now it's earning more interest. And maybe you make longer term investments like buying stocks or things like that, which have to be a whole nother session. Or maybe you just be happy that it's earning more interest. But getting that account set up so that you have that capacity. And once you have that electronic link, then if you need the money, you can transfer it. Usually takes a day or two to get there, but it's going back and forth quite easily. So great question. Any other fun questions? Should we jump to?
I thought we can move to the FAQs, and then if anybody else thinks of a question, they can just drop in the chat and we can answer that.
Yes. Okay. Well, we hit a little bit on this. So what apps can you use? So I think, Fidelity is a big one. Charles Schwab is another big one. There's, the Robinhood is a newer one that's out there that I've never used, but I know a lot of people use Robinhood. You know, E-Trade is kind of an older one, but again, it's very good electronic background, like our electronic systems that allow the money to be transferred back and forth easily. E-Trade is owned by Morgan Stanley, so it's owned by this big, very reputable bank with a lot of financial background. So I would pick one of those big ones. And again, if your parents have an account that they're using, it's a great way to make it easier and just help set it up. But these ones that I named, these are set up to be much more almost self-service, so they're easier to use. There's a whole bunch of other options that are much more managed and whatnot, but this is a great first way to start. Um, the second one is a bit tricky. How can I start saving money while in high school? Well, you know, the big challenge here is while you're in high school, you're always at school instead of at a job, so it's hard to make as much money. So it is really going to start with setting that budget, making sure you set your budget and make sure you know how much money you're making and make sure you spend less than that. But also, each month look at how did I do against my budget? I said I was only going to spend $1,000 and go through your bank account or use one of their tools and just do the quick math. It doesn't take more than a half hour once a month to buzz through and see how you did against your budget to see if you're on track. I think just being aware of that, and you'll start to make those choices that help you find ways to save money. If you've got a little bit of money coming from a part-time job or babysitting or dog sitting or whatever it is, that can add up fairly quickly when you stay at it. And if you're smart about where you spend and really think about when you go to spend money, is this something I need or something I want? But if you started off with at least saving first and then balancing out needs and wants, and maybe there's something you want and it's really important, just don't do it right away. Give yourself a bit more time. Two things will happen. One, you'll save up the money to get it so you don't go in debt doing it. And second, it gives you the time. If a month later you still want it, you probably should get it if you save the money. A lot of times I think I want something. I sometimes even think I need something. And a month later, it turns out I'm over it and I've moved on. So it never hurts to slow down a bit. Um, the best ways to track spending there, first, because it's free, it's just your bank account is, if they have, you can download your transactions if you don't have a lot of them. It's still fairly easy. There are some online tools that are out there, like Quick and Simplify is something I use, and there's a little small charge. It's not too bad where it imports all your stuff and helps you categorize your expenses. There's things like that. There's a number of apps out there, and again, a lot of your bank accounts will do the basic piece of it. There's one trick here though. If you use cash a lot, it doesn't track it. It just says cash went out the door and you won't know what you spend it on. So if you're using cash a lot, you probably need to keep track. You need to write it down or do something else so you can understand where that money went. That is one good reason to use your debit card is you'll be able to see like, oh, there's Chipotle, oh, Jimmy John's, and you'll add it up and you'll realize you spent your whole paycheck having sandwiches when you could have just stolen one from your parents. Slick and easy. But track your money with that. Try just start with your bank account and see what tools they have to track your money. Some banks, you know, open up other alternatives to you or give you discounts too. So that's good. How can you protect your banking information online? Oh, one of my favorite dad speeches. Okay. Two-factor authentication. You know how some websites you have to type in a password and then they text you? That's two-factor authentication. Password is one, you get text and then you type in the little code. Please, please, please always use two-factor authentication. Sometimes it's that text that comes to you. Sometimes they use an authenticator app, which produces a code on your phone. Both are good. Always sign up for two-factor authentication. But here's the other reality and protecting your banking online. The bad guys have all your passwords. They just do. So if you use the same password over and over again, the bad guys have it. And that means the bad guys can rob you blind and it's going to be terrible. And it happens to people all the time. So don't use the same password over and over again. All of you who are iPhone drivers, there's a password app on there. I think Google Android has one, or Android has one too, that will generate passwords for you. Or there's things like LastPass or 1Password, tools like that, that generate really funky, crazy passwords that you could never remember. But they're awesome because when you go to that website, it just autofills for you. You can cut and paste it right in there. You have to remember, your money in the bank, if some bad guy logs in and takes your money, it is gone. And that's not covered by insurance because the bank didn't go broke. You've got to protect that. So you make sure you use unique passwords for your bank accounts and two-factor authentication. And then you should be safe. Sound good? Oh, and don't use the same password for all your bank accounts because then they could rob all of them. Unfortunately, because there's so many hacks out there and so many of us in the world have recycled passwords, the odds are very high that if you've been recycling a password for a while, it's been disclosed out there. And it's a sad tragedy. They also will tell you never give away your social security number and things like that. A lot of us, our social security numbers out there because of hacks that have happened. So again, you really need this. This next question on Credit Karma is interesting. So there's a few ways you can do it. Now, Credit Karma, I think it's a guide, and I don't know a ton about Credit Karma. It does a couple things. So it monitors your credit reports and your credit scores. There are a number of ways you can do this. And the trick here is Credit Karma, I believe they charge. If you go to any of the big credit rated agencies, you can sign on with them, and they have to, by law, give you a credit report every year for free, so you can check it yourself. But they usually have a free service and a paid service where they too monitor your credit, and you will get emails. Now, they try so hard to get you to do the paid one. I personally just do the free one, but I get emails constantly from them about my credit score going up and down, things like that. So that really helps you to be aware of your credit. I think Credit Karma gives you tips about things that you could do to help build your credit. You should explore that if it's of interest. The principles, though, are the same. Always make your payments, always make your payments on time. Don't rack up a bunch of debt, and don't rack up a bunch of debt capacity like credit cards, even if you're not using them. All those will squish down your credit rating. And so you can do a lot of this yourself. I would really encourage you to think about credit monitoring, the free service. And there's one other thing out there that you definitely need to have a password manager for this, or you'll forget your password. You can actually go to each of the credit agencies and freeze your credit reports, or freeze your credit, excuse me. You can still get your report. But that means, like, if some bad person gets your name and your social security and tries to go open a debt in your name, the credit report, the lender will try to run a credit report, and they'll see it's locked, and they won't give them the credit until it's unlocked. So locking your credit is perhaps one of the most important tools you could have. I certainly recommend it to all of my family that even my parents, I locked all their credit on their accounts and saved all their passwords in my password manager. But that means nobody can steal their identity. And that's really, really important. You do that, plus you have credit monitoring, you'll really be on top of it. So there you go. Did I see another exciting question come in?
Yeah, it looks like we have one more question before we end. Can a high school open a Roth IRA account?
Oh, yes, with their parents signing off. Again, because you're not 18, or assuming you're not 18, um, you'll have a parent will have to open it up on a custodial basis. I did research this today, but you have to have a job to open up a Roth IRA. You need earned income. But most of you have some earned income from a job or whatnot. And so that will give you a capacity. You can open your Roth IRA, you can make a contribution, and then you can know Uncle Sam does not get to tax your earnings until you retire, which is a long ways away. There you go. So thanks, you guys. I appreciate you all listening to me. Mary, Amy, any other questions?
Yeah, we just wanted to thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope you guys found this webinar helpful and that you're walking away with some useful financial tips. This slideshow will be getting sent out in an email along with a recording, so just keep an eye out in your email for that.
Also, if anyone has any further questions or if you want to continue this conversation, feel free to reach out to any of our Financial Literacy Club members. Thank you again, everyone, for coming, and thank you so much to our guest speaker, Mr. Brown. We hope you all have a great night, and we hope to see you all at our next session.
Thanks, guys. Take care.